They ruled the highways, packed the malls, and filled childhoods with noise, color, and comfort food, then disappeared like they were never there. But look closer, and each one tells a different story. From pies to puppets to pancake empires, their quiet exits reveal more than just changing tastes. They reveal how much the way we eat has truly changed. Take ChiChis, for example, a chain that burst onto the scene in 1975 when a former Green Bay Packer decided football wasn't paying enough bills. He created what would become America's favorite fake Mexican food chain, because apparently nothing says authentic Mexican cuisine like having your recipes developed by someone who spent their career getting tackled by linemen. Within 2 decades, ChiChis had exploded to over 200 locations across the United States. People couldn't get enough of their salsa, chimichangas, and colorful decor that screamed Mexico louder than a mariachi band. Then 2003 arrived with a vengeance. A massive hepatitis A outbreak linked to contaminated green onions affected over 600 people. 4 people died. Turns out their green onions were more dangerous than their jalapenos, which wasn't exactly the kind of heat customers were looking for. The company filed for bankruptcy and closed every U.S. location. But here's the twist. Hormel still sells ChiChis salsa in European grocery stores, proving that sometimes corporate zombies can cross oceans. Speaking of chains that face their own deadly supply problems, Arthur Treachers Fish and Chips launched in 1969. Named after a British actor famous for playing butlers in Hollywood movies. They named their fish restaurant after a guy whose biggest claim to fame was serving tea and crumpets to rich people on movie sets. The chain promised authentic British-style fish and chips to Americans. By the 70s, they had over 800 locations serving fried white fish, chips, hush puppies, and malt vinegar that most customers didn't understand. The restaurants featured fake British decor and servers who probably wished they could speak with convincing accents. Then the Cod Wars happened. Not actual warfare, but a serious trade dispute between the United Kingdom and Iceland over fishing rights. When your entire business model depends on one type of fish, having a cod war is like a steakhouse running out of beef during a barbecue competition. The chain changed ownership multiple times as different companies tried to figure out how to run a fish restaurant without reliable fish supplies. By 2021, only one original location remained in Ohio. Yet supply chain problems weren't the only thing that could kill a restaurant chain. Druthers started life as Burger Queen in 1956 in Kentucky, because apparently someone thought the fast food industry needed royal titles. They served burgers fit for a queen to customers who were definitely more like court jesters when it came to their dining budgets. For 25 years, they operated under this regal name. In 1981, corporate executives decided Burger Queen was too limiting for their expansion plans. They rebranded to Druthers and expanded the menu beyond burgers to include fried chicken, country-style breakfast items, and other Southern comfort foods. Unfortunately, being nice and serving decent food doesn't pay the rent when McDonald's is building golden arches everywhere faster than weeds. While Druthers was serving Southern hospitality, McDonald's was serving billions and winning the numbers game. Most Druthers locations became Dairy Queen restaurants by the early 90s as franchisees switched to more profitable brands. The last Druthers hung on until the early 2000s in Kentucky. Sometimes rebranding just delays the inevitable. However, another chain discovered that going upscale could create different problems. G.D. Ritzy's opened in 1980 in Columbus, Ohio, with a simple but expensive idea: premium fast food. They offered upscale burgers, hand-dipped ice cream, and Art Deco interiors that looked like movie sets. They basically took fast food and gave it a tuxedo, then wondered why customers weren't willing to pay formal dinner prices for a hamburger. The chain reached over 120 locations at their peak during the mid-'80s expansion boom. Everything about the experience screamed quality and sophistication. Better ingredients than competitors, hand-dipped ice cream instead of machine-dispensed soft serve. But here's the fundamental problem with premium fast food. People eat fast food because it's both fast and cheap. Most customers would rather eat 3 regular burgers than one fancy burger that costs the same amount, especially when both options fill you up equally. G.D. Ritzy's couldn't compete with traditional fast food prices when customers started comparing value propositions. Today, only a few locations remain in Ohio and Kentucky. Premium pricing wasn't the only way to stand out. Decades earlier, one revolutionary chain proved the future belonged to automation. Horn and Hardart established themselves in 1888 in Philadelphia and basically invented what the future of dining would look like. They created the automat concept where customers bought food from glass compartments using coins. It was the first restaurant where you could get a meal without having to make small talk with a waiter, which was revolutionary for antisocial diners everywhere. At their peak during the early 20th century, they served 800,000 customers daily in New York City and Philadelphia combined. The automat became especially popular during the Great Depression because it offered quality food at rock-bottom prices. The concept was revolutionary for its time and social implications. No waiters meant no tips, no awkward social interactions, and no judgment from staff about your food choices. But progress eventually killed progress in the most ironic way imaginable. The 70s brought microwave ovens and fast food chains that somehow served food even faster. Apparently, people preferred their food heated by teenagers with attitude rather than retrieved from dignified glass compartments like civilized human beings. While automation was losing appeal, another concept tried a completely different approach. Steak and Ale launched in 1966 with a revolutionary idea that would completely change casual dining forever: affordable steakhouse dining for regular people. They figured out how to make steak dinners affordable for families who usually had to choose between paying rent and eating beef. They introduced salad bars and made quality sirloin accessible to middle-class families. The restaurants featured dark wood paneling, dim lighting, and atmosphere that made customers feel sophisticated even when bringing their kids for dinner. At their peak, they had over 280 locations nationwide. They convinced America that building your own salad from a communal bar was somehow more elegant than having someone else make it. People loved getting steakhouse quality without steakhouse prices, and the salad bars became legendary destinations in themselves. Some customers treated them like all-you-can-eat challenges requiring strategic planning. But ownership changes are rarely good news for successful restaurant chains. After being sold multiple times, the brand lost focus and filed for bankruptcy in 2008. Sometimes the best ideas come from revolutionizing familiar concepts in unexpected ways. Burger Chef started in 1954 in Indianapolis, Indiana, and immediately began innovating in ways that would change the entire fast food industry. They perfected flame-broiled burgers and efficient service systems while McDonald's was still figuring out their basic procedures. They were grilling burgers over real flames while McDonald's was still trying to figure out how to make their griddles work consistently. In 1973, they created something that would become a cornerstone of family dining: the first kids' meal with a toy called the Fun Meal. McDonald's didn't introduce Happy Meals until 1979, which means Burger Chef was bribing children with toys 6 years before the clown figured it out. By the mid-70s, they had over 1,200 locations, making them the second largest burger chain in America behind only McDonald's. Their flame-broiled method produced better-tasting burgers than competitors, but being second place in a rapidly expanding industry wasn't enough to guarantee survival. Hardee's acquired them in 1982 and systematically converted or closed locations. Innovation wasn't always enough to save chains, especially when controversy became part of the brand identity. Sambo's opened in 1957 in Santa Barbara, California, with founders combining their names Sam and Bo to create what seemed like an innocent restaurant identity. Unfortunately, they picked a name that was already famous for all the wrong reasons, like naming your restaurant Hamlet and being surprised when people expect Shakespearean drama with their pancakes. By 1979, they had reached 1,117 locations across America, serving standard breakfast and dinner fare to families who either didn't notice or didn't care about the problematic imagery. But the chain faced national protests and organized boycotts during the Civil Rights era as people pointed out the obvious problems. Turns out using controversial children's book characters to sell pancakes was about as good an idea as using horror movie villains to promote family dining. They tried damage control by rebranding some locations as No Place Like Sam's, but changing names couldn't erase decades of problematic imagery. They filed for bankruptcy in 1981. Cultural sensitivity wasn't the only challenge facing themed restaurants in changing times. Bennigans opened in 1976, bringing Irish-American pub culture to suburban shopping centers across America. They created Irish pubs for people who thought Ireland was that place where leprechauns made breakfast cereal and everything was painted green. They served sandwiches, burgers, and fried appetizers in restaurants decorated with green everything. They peaked at over 300 locations worldwide, serving Monte Cristo sandwiches and other pub-style fare to customers who wanted to feel Irish without learning about actual Irish culture. But the casual dining market became increasingly crowded during the 2000s as every shopping center seemed to feature multiple themed restaurants. When every restaurant claims to be Irish, nobody feels particularly Irish anymore. It's like having 10 different people claim to be your best friend. The chain filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2008, and most corporate-owned stores closed immediately. A few franchise locations still operate today. Theme restaurants weren't the only casualties of changing tastes. Marie Callender's began as a humble pie business in California during the 1940s, built on the simple idea that people would pay good money for homemade-style pies. The first full restaurant opened in 1964, serving pot pies, quiche, meatloaf, and famous homemade pies. They served the kind of comfort food that made you feel like you were eating at your grandmother's house, assuming your grandmother was actually good at cooking. They expanded to over 130 restaurants across the western United States during their peak years. The chain became synonymous with comfort food and family dining that actually felt comfortable instead of rushed. The restaurants offered something that fast food chains simply couldn't compete with: genuine comfort that felt authentic and caring. The food was homemade style with generous portions, but comfort food couldn't save them from serious financial problems. They filed for bankruptcy in 2011. Now you can still buy their frozen pot pies in grocery stores, but you have to microwave them yourself like some kind of culinary peasant. Family dining wasn't the only concept struggling to survive. Farrell's opened in 1963 in Portland, Oregon, with a simple but completely insane mission: make ice cream sundaes so ridiculously enormous that eating them becomes theatrical entertainment. They treated ice cream like it was a competitive sport that required team effort and possibly medical supervision. They peaked at over 130 locations during the 70s, when America apparently had a much higher tolerance for noise and sugar-induced chaos. The restaurants became famous for enormous sundaes that challenged both structural engineering and human stomach capacity. They turned eating dessert into a three-ring circus, which was great until people realized they just wanted ice cream, not a Broadway production with their banana split. The concept required enormous amounts of energy from both employees and customers. The concept declined during the 80s as operating costs increased and tastes shifted toward quieter dining experiences. Running a restaurant requiring elaborate musical performances gets expensive quickly. Entertainment wasn't the only way to attract families. Showbiz Pizza Place opened in 1980 when someone decided that pizza restaurants desperately needed more robots and fewer human interactions. They featured an animatronic band called the Rock-a-Fire Explosion, performing songs while children ate pizza. They combined two things kids love: pizza and robots, which seemed brilliant until parents realized the robots were louder than their children. They had hundreds of locations by the mid-80s, all featuring the same animatronic band performing identical songs for children who were either delighted or terrified by singing mechanical animals. It was like hiring a babysitter who never moved from their spot, never changed expressions, and performed the same three songs all day. Pizza quality became secondary to the robot show, which probably says something important about priorities in family entertainment during the 80s. The animatronics were the main attraction. After financial problems hit the pizza and robots industry, they merged with Chuck E. Cheese in 1984. By 1992, the Showbiz brand had been completely rebranded. Some restaurant concepts had been serving families long before robots became popular. Morrisons Cafeteria was founded in 1920 in Mobile, Alabama, during an era when cafeterias were considered the absolute height of dining sophistication. The chain operated as a Southern-style cafeteria, where customers walked through serving lines and selected from dozens of homemade-style dishes. It was like a buffet with table service, which somehow made waiting in line feel more dignified than serving yourself. They became legendary throughout the South for their perfectly tender roast beef, hearty meatloaf, creamy mashed potatoes, heavenly banana pudding, and fresh baked rolls. The cafeteria line was democracy in action. Construction workers and church ladies all got the same excellent food, just in different sized portions. Morrisons thrived for decades, serving the kind of comfort food that actually provided genuine comfort instead of just filling stomachs. Sunday dinners at Morrisons became cherished family traditions, but cafeterias gradually lost popularity as dining habits changed and shopping malls began their long decline. In 1998, another cafeteria company acquired Morrisons. Traditional comfort food wasn't the only regional cuisine trying to expand nationally. Kenny Rogers Roasters launched in 1991 when a country music legend decided that being successful at singing wasn't quite enough of a challenge. Apparently, having hit songs and a successful music career wasn't sufficient. Someone needed to prove they could also master the art of rotisserie chicken. They specialized in rotisserie chicken, addictive corn muffins, and side dishes that were supposed to taste exactly like home cooking. A popular sitcom episode featuring the restaurant gave them unexpected national publicity. That TV episode did more for their business than any celebrity endorsement could, proving that sometimes the best advertising comes from fictional characters obsessing over your chicken. At their peak, they operated over 350 locations worldwide, serving genuinely good chicken that didn't taste like laboratory experiments. The rotisserie cooking method produced juicy, flavorful chicken. All U.S. stores closed or were converted by the early 2000s, proving that even celebrity endorsement couldn't save restaurant chains. Interestingly, the brand remains active in Asia. Celebrity endorsements weren't always necessary for achieving restaurant success. Bob's Big Boy was founded in 1936 in Glendale, California, and immediately changed burger history forever by creating something that had never existed before: the double-decker burger. They took the simple hamburger and turned it into an engineering challenge that required strategy, strong jaw muscles, and possibly a structural engineering degree. The Big Boy burger featured 2 beef patties, fresh lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and special sauce carefully assembled on a 3-layer sesame seed bun. It was basically what happens when a regular burger goes to college and comes back home showing off with extra layers and fancy sauce. They peaked at over 240 locations during the 70s, with the iconic mascot representing American abundance. Many locations featured car hop service where uniformed waitresses delivered food directly to customers. But franchising success can become complicated when everyone wants to modify a working concept. The brand eventually splintered into numerous regional variants. Today, only a few locations remain in California. These 15 forgotten chains remind us that even the most popular dining concepts can disappear faster than a double-decker burger at lunch break.